Hey guys, it's Celestia, and today I'm going to be talking about art advice that just fills me with rage whenever I hear it. To be clear, it isn't necessarily bad advice. Not only are these just my opinions, but the fact that I hate hearing it doesn't mean that I think it's wrong or ill-intentioned. A lot of the things I'll list in this video are completely valid pieces of advice, and if they happen to be things that you've said or agreed with, please know that I mean no offense. I hate hearing that Diet Coke is bad for you, but that doesn't mean I think it's the new water. I'll explain why I hate hearing these particular suggestions, but just let this be a disclaimer that that does not mean that I think any of them are fundamentally incorrect. This isn't a bad art advice video, it's honestly more akin to an art pet peeves video, because I'm really not claiming that any of this advice is objectively bad. So first on the list of irritating art advice is one that I've heard quite a few people complain about, and it's to study realism before you do anything else. The most basic and frequently repeated art advice I've ever heard is that you shouldn't draw anime or cartoon styles until you've perfected your fundamentals with realism, because to stylize your art in such a way, you need to know what the realistic, not stylized version of what you're drawing is supposed to look like. And this is completely 100% correct, and I've suggested it in moderation myself. Stylizing your work, like an anime style, is essentially just drawing something wrong on purpose, and before you do that, you should know how to draw it right so that drawing it wrong looks right. So why does advice that I agree with piss me off? Well, because it's essentially the same as saying that you should drink 8 glasses of water every day and eat 3 perfectly balanced healthy meals. Of course it's correct, but I cannot imagine that adhering to that every single day for your entire life and never eating a burger or drinking a slushie instead of an ideal amount of water would lead to anything other than a joyless existence. In an ideal world, I wouldn't drink 5 cups of coffee a day, and I would have learned how to draw an actual human head, how it really looks, before learning to make that head gigantic with pretty sparkly anime eyes. But I love coffee, and I love drawing anime, and whilst I probably would have progressed with a better foundation of skills if I had stopped drawing it until I perfected my fundamentals with realism, I probably would have lost interest in art before that ever had a chance to happen, because drawing anime was what I fell in love with first about art. Telling people not to draw what they love the way they love to draw it, because that's technically not the right way, is inevitably going to take the joy out of art for a lot of people, and it might stop a lot of them from pursuing it at all. It's also assuming that everyone is drawing to improve, to become a professional, to achieve perfection, whereas a lot of people are just drawing because they like it and they want to enjoy it as a hobby. Even if they do want to improve or become a professional, telling people they have to reach a certain skill level with realism in order to adequately draw the way they love to draw just seems unnecessarily restrictive. If you want to improve your art and draw anime, study your fundamentals alongside it. You don't have to do things in the perfect order even if it is technically ideal, because your happiness and enjoyment of your art matter just as much as your skill. The next piece of advice I hate hearing is not to sell your work until you reach a certain skill level or level of confidence with it. Again, not technically untrue. Your focus, in an ideal world, should always be your growth and improvement as an artist and not making money from it. And if you focus too much on monetizing it instead of improving it, your skills can absolutely stagnate and suffer. It can also be exceptionally discouraging to sell art when you're not great at it yet and have no one buy it. There are a lot of reasons that this piece of advice is completely correct and valid, but it can also be very limiting. I heard this advice constantly when I was young, and it got into my head so much that when I got into my first convention as an artist, I ended up being so worried that my art wasn't at that level yet, wasn't good enough yet, I wasn't confident enough yet, and I ended up backing out of the convention at the last minute and losing that potential experience and opportunity as a result. Who's to say how successful that convention would have been, but I guarantee you that one person would have bought one thing from me and reaffirmed that there was some value in my art, and it would have motivated me towards pursuing it as a career rather than making me think I just wasn't ready for it and maybe never would be. The problem with this advice isn't that it's wrong, but that if you ask an artist to objectively look at their work and decide whether or not it's of high enough quality to sell, you're never gonna get a confident yes. I don't know one artist that doesn't look at their work and see all of its flaws before anything else, who is just decidedly confident in their skills and every piece that they make. It's so difficult to judge your own work, and for the most part, we as artists tend to favor doubt and criticism as a first response to it rather than pride and positivity. So if you're too hung up on this advice and constantly wondering whether or not your art is good enough to sell, chances are that you'll never feel like it is. And if you don't get past it at some point and shove that advice aside for a minute and just sell it anyway, you may never sell it at all. I'm not saying quit your day job and just sell art if you're not even sure if it'll sell, but put yourself out there. Table at conventions, submit your work to galleries or contests, start that online store you've been meaning to, open commissions. You're never going to feel completely confident that your work is at that nebulous, impossible to define level of, this is actually worth money. So don't spend your whole life waiting for that confidence just because someone told you to wait until you're a real pro to sell any of your work. Moving on, the next piece of advice that fills me with rage is not to focus on your social media presence and not to worry about how much you post. Again, as I'm sure you're already tired of hearing me say, that's not wrong. Social media sucks. It puts you in a toxic environment where you're constantly comparing your art to that of your peers, and there's a lot of pressure to post art so frequently that you burn yourself out just to gain an audience. But if you want to build an audience and become a professional artist, or at least a professional artist in a field that requires social media presence for success, it's just not realistic to say that those things mean you shouldn't care about it. In a perfect world, we could all draw at our own pace and never worry about how much we're posting it online or making new merch or videos or getting new followers. But this isn't a perfect world, and it's just not pragmatic or sensible to suggest that those things don't or shouldn't matter. What it comes down to is that posting regularly is necessary to maintaining and growing a following. Social media presence is relevant and important to many fields of professional art, and dealing with the toxicity and stress that it brings is just an inevitability that we all have to deal with. The people saying, just don't worry about social media or posting often, and focus completely on your art itself instead, are not, in my opinion, being realistic or helpful, because while that would obviously be preferable and ideal, that doesn't mean it's actually practical. I think better advice when it comes to social media interaction would be more along the lines of trying to have a healthier relationship with social media and your posting schedule. Like encouraging people not to place value on their work based on how much engagement it gets or how many followers they have. Or not to overwork themselves just to post more on social media, and just post doodles or other quick, low-effort content instead of finished pieces when they're busy or tired or burnt out. Number 4 on Celestia's list of advice that gives her aneurysms is to go to art school, or that you need to go to art school in order to be successful. I think it's interesting that you hear this one almost exclusively from people that have never been to art school or are not even artists themselves to begin with. This is something I regularly get full-on harassed by my family about, despite the fact that none of them have any experience with the art industry, art school, or the current state of the professional art world. Conversely, talking to actual artists who have been to art school yields a much different set of responses. And the one that I hear most frequently is that while art school can be very beneficial in a multitude of ways, it's not worth the student debt, and it's not a prerequisite for pursuing art professionally anymore, given how much the industry has moved away from its older, more traditional, gallery-based roots. To be clear, I have not been to art school, so I can't give an informed opinion on the worth of it. But I've spoken to more artists than I can count about it during my research to help me decide if it was right for me, and not one of them has said that they would do it again if they could go back and make that decision over again. I've heard that above all else, art school is very helpful in the development of a professional, well-rounded portfolio, improving a more extensive variety of art skills than you might otherwise have explored, and allowing you to potentially make connections that could be helpful later in your career. I've also heard that in general, it's a super awesome experience, and that the growth that it helps you achieve as an artist is significant. But the same people that said these things also said that all of these things could be achieved with online courses and dedication, while also avoiding the crippling student debt that comes with art school, and that when they've been applying for industry positions, their degree was borderline irrelevant. They were judged on their portfolio above all else. And that's only in relation to industry positions, which isn't even an avenue that you need to pursue as a professional artist. Because with the growth of the internet and online communities, there are more ways to make money as an artist than there have ever been before. I found that people who will push you to go to art school and claim that it's necessary no matter what type of career you want as an artist are usually people who either aren't artists themselves, don't have experience with what they're talking about, or are very traditional in their approach to art and making money with it, and subsequently unfamiliar with the newer, ever-expanding horizon of art opportunities that the internet has to offer. And to be clear, I'm not saying art school is bad, nor am I suggesting that people not go. I would 100% go if it wouldn't put me in crippling debt and take valuable time away from the art business that I'm already running, because that experience truly does sound fantastic, and I never want to stop growing and learning as an artist. My problem isn't with advice saying that art school is awesome and you should consider going. My problem is with advice saying that art school is necessary to have a career in art and that you won't succeed without it. Anyway, I'll end this off with smaller miscellaneous pieces of art advice that piss me off but don't necessarily require paragraphs worth of explanations. Like work for exposure, for example. Don't do this. Don't ever give your work away for free in exchange for exposure, no matter what degree of exposure it may offer you. Exposure dollars don't pay your bills or buy you food. Exposure almost never has enough value to warrant the amount of work that you actually put into the art you gave in exchange for it, and you're setting a precedent for other potential employers to offer you exposure rather than payment because you showed that you're already alright with accepting that. Or draw every day. Like, if you have the energy and motivation and time to draw every single day, absolutely do that. But if you had a long day and you're exhausted and you just don't want to draw that day, you shouldn't force yourself to constantly, all the time, just for the sake of growth. This is like the most reliable way to make yourself hate art and fall into the throes of burnout. Similarly, practice or do art warm-ups before you work for at least an hour. Like, sure, that's ideal and it has a huge amount of value, but if you actually have the time for that every single time you work as a professional artist who's trying to make a living, you're an actual god and I am desperate for you to share your wisdom with me. I could rant about things that I'm tired of hearing for an indefinite amount of time, but that's because I emotionally identify as an angry grandpa yelling at passing teens about their saggy pants and loud music, and if I'm not complaining about something, I'm probably not even alive. I don't know why you guys vote for these videos, but I hope you enjoy them anyway, and if you're interested in an alternative take on this video of art advice that I've actually found really helpful, let me know in the comments below. I like to at least try to balance out my angry old man rants with some helpful positivity. As I mentioned last week, you guys will be getting a second video this week, which will be posted tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. It's a challenge with prizes alongside a fun little story time, so I hope you guys like it. Anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video.